Hello, welcome to our first Begin to Code with C# video. This will tell you how to get started creating programs and learning how to program in C# with the wonderful Begin to Code with C# book, which I'm going to put in a subtle plug for. This is basically a programming from first principles text which you can download from on your Kindle. You can buy it in printed form. It's on Amazon, it's all over the place, and it's all good. In this little video I'm going to show you what you need to get started, how to install Visual Studio 2017, the starter kit programs and how to download them, how to get demonstration programs running, and how to make a program of your or our own. So that's basically going to get you going with the book and the programs that the book uses. So prerequisites, things you must have lying around. You must be running Windows 10 64-bit version on a machine. If your processor has an i in the name, like i5 or i7 or i3 on your computer, then it should work. If your processor has the word Atom in the name, it may well be a 32-bit version, and it won't work. So you'll have to have a fairly new, reasonable machine running Windows 10 64-bit version. You must also have admin privileges. If you're using this in a lab or a corporate managed computer, you might not be allowed to install software on that platform. You need to be able to do that to actually make the Visual Studio installation work correctly. And the third thing you will need, that third thing you must have, is a Microsoft account. We're going to be making Windows 10 Universal Applications, and you need an account to do this. It's a free thing to do. You just have to have an email address, and then away you go. But you must have those three things lined up before you can go on and actually do the installing. Now, the good news is that the program we're going to use is Visual Studio 2017. It's a free download. You can use it to make applications for sale in Windows Store. It's a large download. You need about 10 gigabytes of hard drive space, and it'll take a little while, so have something lying around to read or another thing to do while it installs. So you'll have to install this, and we're going to do that, I think, first. A little bit of context. If you think of things like Word and Excel as programs that process documents and spreadsheets, you can think of Visual Studio as a word processor for programs. In Word you have a document, in Visual Studio you have a solution which contains source code and several hundred other little files, documentation, images, sounds, whatnot. And the sample framework has lots of these. They're all built up in a big library called Snaps, and this provides a really easy way to start using the features of Windows 10 to start making fun and interesting programs. So we have to have this thing because it's a bit like if you haven't got Word, you can't work on Word documents. If you haven't got Visual Studio, you can't work on C# programs and use them with the book. But it's all free and it's all good, so let's just carry on. So I'm going to do a little walkthrough of installing Visual Studio 2017. I'm going to actually do it on this live machine while you watch, although I'll nip off for a few minutes because the actual download and install does take a little while to complete, and so I'll cut that bit out of the finished video if that's okay with you. So here's what we're doing. We're going to go to the download site. We're going to start the download process. We're going to ensure that applications, we're going to go through all this, and the first thing we do is we start with a trip to the web. So I'm going to basically just drop out of here, and I'm going to go to I'm going to search for Visual Studio Download. You see it knows me already, and then I'm going to go into this guy here. Don't follow any of the ads. They're not really there for anything useful. And then having done that, the one we want is Community 2017, which is this guy here. Free download. Click go. You now get another redirect. Here we are. It says thank you before you've even done it, which is nice. And I'd rather not do a survey just now. Thank you. That's pretty good. So you get offered the chance to download this tiny little program, and you start thinking to yourself, my goodness, just a megabyte for Visual Studio? That's awesome. Not quite how it is. Hit run. And what happens now is a little tiny program is downloaded and starts to run. And that's doing what's called a bootstrap, which comes from the old expression to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And it's a little program, it loads a bigger program, loads a bigger program, loads a bigger program, and we have to let it run it, so we'll do that saying yes. And so now the program kicks into life. It'll take a few seconds to download the various elements that provide the installation menu. And when we get that, we'll have to make a few small changes to this menu to make sure that we get the right bits of Visual Studio installed on the machine we're going to use. But once that's going, we can then start to pick what it is we want to do. Are you already running? Here we go. It's asking me if I want to continue, so I will say yes, please. And now we get one of many, many, many progress bars you're going to have to sit through and watch run to completion as the actual installation process starts. Now it's quite friendly, it's quite well managed, and there are all kinds of recovery options. If you get the installation a little bit wrong, don't worry, because it's actually very easy to go in there and modify the settings and put things back that shouldn't be there. You can even uninstall the whole thing and start completely from scratch should you wish to do that. But we're going to get it right first time, so absolutely no worries for us. If we don't, well, you'll never see that, will you? Because I'll edit that bit out. So this is the main menu, and what we get is basically a whole bunch of different options of kinds of programs we can build. Visual Studio is a big framework, and in that framework we can load different elements depending on what kind of programs we want to make. We want to make universal Windows platform development, so we must tick this box. That's kind of important, because if we don't do that, we don't have the ability to open the Visual Studio projects which the demonstration programs are made up of. If you want to, and you fancy making some other programs, .NET type ones, you can click this development environment option as well. So we'll do that. And then we'll just go back here. Oh dear. Let's go back, get rid of both those two and start again by clicking this guy. Sorry about that. Because before I move on to a thing which we don't have to do, I have to cover something that we do have to do. So here we are, Universal Windows Platform Development, and I must click on this little guy here. The applications that are part of the Snaps framework were built using version 10.0.10586. If you haven't got that particular library installed, then you may well have problems making the Snaps libraries work. Now, this is just life. I make no apologies for this particularly, but I would say that it's very, very important that in this particular part of the install, you must have this guy clicked and this guy clicked. Then you can go on and pick this guy if you want. And so what you have on this side now is like a little tree of things you're going to get. You're going to get the core editor, you're going to get the Universal Windows Platform Development Environment with UWP, and then you're also going to get the Windows 10 SDK version 10. Blah blah blah, and then you're going to get the .NET stuff which is down here, and you can expand that and take a little look if you want to. That will let you write C# applications and run them as Windows apps as well. So now we've done all that, it's going to take us 17.5 gigabytes, which is quite a lot, but remember it's all free. And you can always drink coffee or whatever you like while the installation proceeds. So I'm going to hit install. So what happens now is that we see two progress bars. One of them is going to chart the download progress of our application, and the other is going to chart the actual install process. And so yeah, acquiring is bringing it down and applying is putting it on the machine. So what's going to happen now is this will chunter for a little while, depending on how powerful your machine is and how fast your network is, and then at that point when it's finished, it'll actually have a nice big button marked launch, which we can look forward to in a few minutes. I'm going to toddle off and do that now. I'll be back in a minute or two when it's all cooked. Well, this is exciting. It's finished. This is what you should see after the machine has chugged along. As you can see, I've got a reasonable network connection. It's taken about half an hour or so for the whole thing to come down and be installed. And I'm running in a virtual machine, a pretend PC if you like, so that I can do this kind of video stuff really easily. So we're going to hit the launch button, aren't we? We're going to hit the launch button, of course we are. So when you do that, it'll start running Visual Studio. This will take a few minutes to run the very first time it starts. That's for several reasons, mainly because it has to sort of build the entire library up and get everything sorted and register all the components and do all kinds of other bits and pieces. And the first thing it will ask me to do is sign in. That's fine. Like I said at the start, we have to have a Microsoft account, so we hit sign in. There's more Rutledge. It will now ask me for my Microsoft username and password. We'll just have to wait for that to come up. There we go. So my email or my phone. Let's go for my and I think now, and I hit the password button, it'll now rattle and go, oh yeah, is this a work or a school account? This is a personal account. I own this one. If you have a registration, if your school has something like Office 365 and you have an account which links to that, you may well have an account that goes that way, in which case you'll hit this guy. But I'm just a personal, a one-man band, if you will. And so I hit the personal account button. That might well be the same for you. So now there'll be another rattling noise, and then we'll actually, and then I'll go put my password, which is... Now normally when I do this it takes about 4 goes to get it right, so let's see how well. Oh, we're okay, we're in, we're not so now Visual Studio is getting things ready and it's thanking me for my patience and that's all jolly good, and so once this is actually installed and running, as it will be a minute, we can close it down, which seems like a bit of a missed opportunity if you I guess. Then we can go and continue back onto our presentation and actually install the sample code, get some code running, and then see what happens next. So yes, this may take a few minutes. It actually may take a few minutes. It's doing an awful lot of fixing up behind all those little components that we've asked to download and now being built into the user interface and made ready for us to use. And in a second or so it will leap into life, and there it is. Now, as I said, I don't particularly want to use this. I mean, you can make a brand new project, you can do all kinds of good stuff. What I will do is I'll actually put this Visual Studio installation to sleep, and we'll come back to it a little bit later, and I will go back to my slide deck, which is in the wonderful Office environment here, and I'll just say okay, let's continue from here if we can. I'll leave it on small, because if I do this it'll start from the beginning. See, there you go. And I want to be on about slide 5, say. Let's have a look. It's not working. Dear, my life, eh? 5, try again. Hit return. No, I'll have to step through. Done that. Done that. Done that. Done that. Done that. Hang on, yeah, keep going. Done that. Done that. Done all this. I've signed in. I haven't enabled developer mode. I will do that in the next step. So let's do that now. What I have to do now is just drop out of my presentation, and then go into here. And I'm going to search for developer features. It's not finding it. Oh! Developer mode. It worked in rehearsal. Yes, it did. No, I don't want you to search Bing. Let's try that again. I hate this. Is doing videos is hilarious, isn't it? Developer. I can't spell developer. Settings. Here we go. That's what you want for developer settings. Developer settings. Here we go. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to slightly relax the security on our computer. We're going to allow the computer to run programs that I have written and deployed on this computer. Normally, Windows 10 will not let you do this because it's concerned that you might actually get malicious programs on your machine that do bad things, but we're going to have to do this because we want to write our own programs, and besides, we're not in the habit of downloading programs from the web and running them willy-nilly. So we hit developer mode like that, and then it says, are you sure? And I say yes, and at this point it will now actually go ahead and build the developer mode into my installation. So what we did was we searched for developer feature or developer mode in Visual Studio. You can find it from the control panel. It's actually in the settings. You can search from within there as well. That also works. And so now we're in a position where we can run the programs we're about to write. So we've done that. I can close this down. I can go back to here. I can make you full screen. Yeah. Okay. So we've done that. And as it says there, developer features, that also works, but it's best if you type developer correctly. So now we've got our Visual Studio. Now we have to go off and find our copy of the starter kit. That's on this URL. Can I copy this from the page? No, I can't. Never mind. You'd think I'd be good at this, wouldn't you? But there you go. There's Microsoft.PressStore.com, begin to code with C# and that big number. Can I copy this from here? No, I can't. Oh, never mind. In that case, I'll just have to type it in by hand. Never mind. If I go for I can't type with an audience. I know there's no one watching me now, but let's just search for that and see what we get. Oh, first hit. So search for Microsoft Press Store, begin to code with C#, and it takes you to precisely the page that you want, which is rather nice. Once we've got this page, we can now find the downloads. There you go. And there are two downloads. There's a big zip file which contains the installation instructions and the sample programs, which is this gentleman here. And there's another one further down, which is the magical part 3, which is the online element of by part 4. I apologize. This is which is a element which tells you how to make proper Visual Studio applications using the Windows Universal Application Framework. We use snaps in the book, but this part will teach you how to write programs which run on any PC from scratch. Well worth the read, totally free. You don't even have to buy the book to get that. So if I'm going to ignore that and grab this guy. So hit download. It will get downloaded. There you go. And I will say that I'd like to open it, please. Now it's a zip file, which means that it will show you the contents of the zip file when it is opened. There you go. And inside here there's a folder called begin to code with C# setting, getting started. So open that one. Now these are two PDF files, and this guy here is begin to code with C#, which is the file folder which contains the examples. If I open that one up, then you will see some tempting looking Visual Studio stuff. Please do not run it, because if you try and run it inside the archive, all kinds of weird things happen. I'll show you a Windows 10 trick that not many people know. I'll give this little jiggle, 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 and what happens is that this then becomes the only program on the desktop. Isn't that sweet? Now I can grab hold of my folder in the archive and drag it onto my desktop like that. So what happens now is that lots and lots of sample code, programs, files, bits and pieces are now being downloaded into the desktop and extracted from the archive. Close the downloaded archive and open this folder. Now this is the right way to do it. If you do it the other way, then if you try and run the programs inside the archive, there's no guarantee it will actually work. So I'll open this guy up, which is the folder on the desktop, and I'll open this thing up. I like it if you keep your folder on the desktop because it keeps the paths very short, which means that there's a good chance that the program will work. There's an issue with Visual Studio, and if you put the distribution that we've got in at the bottom of a very long path, then you'll find that actually it won't work very well. We're going to open it with Visual Studio 17, of course we are. Hit OK. You only have to say that once. It'll do that every time from now on. There's now even more rattleage, and at this point we should have our begin to code with C# demonstration area running. And if I go back to my slide deck, here we go, then I'll just step through what I've been doing. Download it, open the file in zip, drag the example folder onto the desktop, very important, open the folder on the desktop. So these are the steps we've just followed, and we've actually gone one step further in that we've actually opened the project up with Visual Studio, and in a minute or two we'll figure out how to run that, because that's the next section. The demo programs are all part of the demonstration solution, and I'll show you the way around that in a minute or two. You can use this solution as we're getting started writing your own programs as well, and I'll mention that also. So opening demos, we've done the first step of that. We've opened the solution. Now let's take a look at how we run the application. Oh yeah, do you trust me? Yes, you do. You will get this because the files have been downloaded from the internet, and Visual Studio quite rightly says I don't necessarily trust things that have come from the internet. So now it's loading the first project. As a second project, I'll get asked the question again in a second or two, I would think, because there are 2 projects in the solution. Again, don't worry about this too much. It's just how the thing works. Okay, so that's I'm just looking at my thing, wondering if my microphone's still working. Doesn't seem to be changing. Hang on a minute. No, I wonder if that's still working. Okay, hit OK. Now, do I stop and check it? I think I do. Turns out my microphone was working fine, it's just the display that was broken. But here we are, this is what you see next. And so now we've got a description of the project and all kinds of stuff that you don't really have to worry about. The good news is that if you look here and here, I'll just close this down. We've got 2 projects loaded. One is Begin to Code with C# and one is the Snaps library, which means that I can hit the Run button and the program will now be built, deployed and start to execute. Now this will take a few seconds the very first time you do it because Visual Studio has to build everything. It also has to fetch some elements down from the internet, which it's downloading, as you can see at the bottom. This stuff only happens once, and so the very first run, yes, it will take a few seconds as it basically gets everything started, but once it's done that, then we should find that at that point we should get Begin to Code, the user interface up and running, and all kinds of nice things will start to happen. As you can see, it's loading all kinds of wonderful stuff. That does also mean that you need to have a network connection when you do this particular part of the process, although once you've done it, then you should be able to run and deploy the programs without needing a network if you don't if you've done this once. So there you go. Yes, I have to think of things to talk about now, like microphones and all kinds of good stuff. But then again, it's never been a problem for me in the past, and I've been told I can talk the hind leg off any animal that might be passing. Even if it hasn't got hind legs, I can still do it. So octopuses and whatnot aren't even safe either. So yeah, the deploy, that's good. Deploy something. One thing which is interesting, you can build and deploy these applications to Raspberry Pis running Windows 10. Or Windows RT devices. Remember those? You can deploy it across the network to tablets and other things, and they will just run. It's rather nice. The word universal in this context really does mean universal, and you could even run it on a Windows phone, whatever that is. Rather sad. And so now it started running. This is the screen you get. This is the default splash screen, which is a screen it shows you while it's got everything going. You can change that to be a nicer picture if you want, but as you can see, I haven't done that. So now we've got the standard layout of the Begin to Code with C# example. On the left, I have a selector which lets me pick the particular chapter I want to take a look at. And on the right I have the apps in that chapter which will appear. Let's have a look in chapter 5. I actually quite like looking at some of the later chapters, but each of these programs is a sample program which is keyed to the text of the book. So Colourful Greeter, if I select that one and hit run, it will actually say running the program. The program asks for your name, in my case that's Rob, and when I hit enter, it's called colourful because it prints out the name in blue, which in my book, at least in my part of the world, is colourful. Okay, you can pick and play with any one of these guys. If you want to see that program run again, hit run that app again, it will run it again. If I want to stop the program, I just go into Visual Studio and I hit the stop button, or I can hit the close button there. Either will work. Let's close it the way that you would close a normal application. Now, as I said, all this program code is keyed to the actual book text. If you want to see the program code itself, let's have a look. Let's expand this. Let's close that guy up and open this folder called chapters. Then have a look in chapter 4. Was it chapter 4? Was it chapter 5? I cannot remember. See if I can find Colourful Greeter. There you go. There he is. So I can have a look at this program by just double clicking on the sample code, and this is so it says what is your name, converts it to uppercase if it's called Rob. If I me, it says get the name of the day of the week, and then tell me having a nice day, and so on. So you can look at all the code, and that's all fine and dandy. So now we know how to actually deploy and run programs that are built in. Let's go back to our slide deck and see what we're doing next. Okay, so there you go. I've done all that. Run application, pick it from a list. You've seen all that run. Let's keep going. You can create your own applications as well. What I want to do now is very quickly just show you how to do that. And this is where you're effectively adding your own programs to the menu. And here are the steps. You can look at this and follow it yourself, or you can watch me fail to make it work properly. Or not, depending on how lucky we get. So let's go back to my Visual Studio running the thing, and I can slide back up here. All the chapters in the chapters folder, which is fine. There's also a folder called My Snaps App, and in there is a program file called myprogram.cs, and here it is. It just contains, it's a C# class of which you'll learn a little bit more later. I'll make it a bit bigger so we can see it. There you go. It's a C# class of which loads of stuff in the book. It has a name called myprogram, and it has a method in there called start program. I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to say copy. Then I'm going to double click on here, and I'm going to hit paste. And that will copy my program, and there it is. It's called copy. I'm going to rename that. I'm going to right click on here and select rename, and I'm going to call it first prog. Like that. Okay, that's called first prog now. Wonderful. Now I'm going to go in here. We've got wavy red lines, which generally speaking means trouble. And the reason why it means trouble is because this name clashes with the name in here. So now I'm going to go in here. I'm going to call this first prog, and this is going to be an application that Robert has created, and it will say set the title to let's do something suitably sensible. Rob is wonderful, and then I'm going to set the actual string it displays to oh yes he is. Okay, so I've made a new source code. I've given it the class name first prog, and I've changed it to, oh, I'm missing out a double quote too, oh dear, and I've changed it to display different things. I'm now going to run the entire thing again. I'm going to hit the run button. There'll now be a suitably rattly amount of rattlage as the new program is built. It'll be quicker than last time though. You see, it was much faster than last time. So now, if we go and have a look in My Snaps app, we'll find there are now two apps. There's My Program, which we've already seen, and First Prog, which I have just made. If I hit that one and then say run, let's bring the thing up so I can see it properly, run an app, then it will say running First Prog. It will say Rob is wonderful. Oh yes he is. So that's how you do it. You make a copy of the program, you change the class name because every class name must be unique, and then having done that you can find it in the My Snaps app. If I say run an app, this one here, it'll run my program which says welcome to Snaps, as here you go, and then you can go through here. Some of the programs will run indefinitely. Some of the programs run once and stop. If a program runs once and stops, you get your menu back here, and away you go from there. So what we have done is, back to the plot, we have created a copy of the empty program, if you like, given it its own contents and behaviors, changed its name, and then off we go. So that's grand. If you hit any problems, please contact me at begintocode@robmiles.com. I can't guarantee to fix every problem that you have, but I can guarantee to have a go. And I'll be making more videos in the future. And thank you very much for watching and putting up with my amiable incompetence. That's what I'm aiming for, amiable incompetence, and I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Thank you.